All right, we have some people to accept. Oh,
Yo, hello.
what did you want to debate today?
Uh, Toxic masculinity.
Okay, what's up?
So my question, well, first off, as far as like toxic masculinity, I don't really think it's a thing. I just think toxic behavior in general is a thing, and it doesn't have. It's not a masculine quality. It's a separate quality altogether. You know.
Okay, well, let me ask you this. I would agree with you, obviously, that there is some toxic behavior that's not like exclusively masculine toxic behavior, but it's more like, what does it mean to be masculine? To be masculine is largely culturally defined, and some of those expectations, not all of them, but some of those expectations for how men are supposed to act are actually harmful and toxic to the man himself. So, like the notion, for example, men are supposed to be tough. Men don't cry. Boys don't cry. That's harmful for men. And it's something that's taught a little bit more to men. Women are shamed for crying also, but it's in a different kind of way. Masculinity is oftentimes perceived as a lack of emotion and things like this.
Yeah, I was taught those types of things, but I think that was good for building. It's important for building your character as an adult. Um, for example, men don't cry. It may sound toxic, but I think it actually is something important because whether you like it or not, men are perceived lesser if they cry. You know, so if you're like I used to be a crybaby all the time when I was
But
really young,
that's
and
toxic masculinity. Like you just said it. Like the fact that men are shamed if they cry or seen as lesser than, that's the toxic masculinity because crying is a normal. Hold on, hold on.
what's toxic about it though? Like
What's
explain.
toxic is when men suppress their emotions and don't cry because that's for babies or for girls or something, then what that looks like is an increased aggression, increased violence. These people are more likely to act out in violence against their significant other. They're far more likely to have emotional problems and mood issues like depression, anxiety, and even suicidality.
So
So
for crying, for example, what I've always been brought up to believe is that crying does not solve anything, which is actually it doesn't solve your problems in the moment.
it's not
So
about solving a
uh,
problem.
what about crying is what about not crying is hurtful to you as an individual?
It's not as if not crying like you need to force yourself to cry, but it's like if you're having strong emotions and you feel like you're going to cry and then you suppress that and ignore that because I'm a man, I don't cry. Oh, that is harmful. You're literally suppressing your natural body's method of calming yourself down. When you cry, your body releases oxytocin and other chemicals that literally calm you down and help bring you back to a state of baseline so that you can begin thinking rationally again. The
I
idea
think
that
that
you need to just suppress your emotions, you're keeping yourself in a constant state of irrationality then.
No, I think that like crying in okay, if you cry alone, I think that's cool. Crying in a public space, it's just like it can just bring unneeded attention to yourself, and I don't think it's helpful at all. Actually, I think that
But
crying,
isn't that true with everybody then?
yeah, I do,
If
but
someone's just sobbing in the middle of the street,
I
like it's
do, and that's why I
probably
believe in like a stoic. It's kind of like a stoic way of trying to view the world. Think about like try to be rational in your current circumstances,
you're
and
not
you
being
can't.
rational. You're being the opposite of rational right now. Because what's rational is human beings have emotions. Men and women have emotions. It doesn't matter if you're a man or a woman. You have emotions, okay? And when you ignore those emotions, it's like having the check engine light on in your car and ignoring it. Those emotions are there because they're giving you a very real signal about things that your body and your brain need. And when you neglect your own needs because you have to perform and perform and perform, you will become a shell of yourself. You become depressed. You become miserable. And here's the kicker, men who do not deal with their own emotions don't know how to deal with their own emotions. And in turn, they don't know how to deal with their significant other's emotions, which literally leads to significant problems for them later on in life when they're married. There
Yeah,
are so many issues with what you're
but
saying. It's completely
but you
irrational.
shouldn't you shouldn't let your emotions control you. You should
That's
control.
no one's saying emotions
So
control you.
for
No, no, no,
example,
no, no. I'm going to just cut you off here because you're
anger
saying
is
something
also.
dumb. No, no one's letting emotions control you. That goes for everybody. You should obviously have emotional maturity
And
and
resisting crying
emotional
is controlling the
intellectualism.
emotions.
No, you should know how to handle your emotions. Like, obviously, there's a time and a place when it might not be appropriate to start bawling. That's true. What I'm talking about, though, is a perpetual and consistent suppressing of emotions, regardless of the circumstance, because you're a man and you're expected to be tough and stoic. That is toxic. It's literally toxic to you. It's toxic to the people around you. It makes men more likely to be depressed, kill themselves, or commit horrible acts of violence against other people. It's completely irrational what you're saying.
I think losing control of your emotions entices more violence than controlling your emotions.
Yes, and how do people usually lose control of their emotions? It's when they're pent up. No, people are not committing murders while they're crying. Hold on, no. People, no.
Crying is the first emotion you could do. Okay, I'm just talking. Can I explain? So when you cry, when you resist crying, this is like the earliest emotion that you're kind of taught to control. But you can learn to control your other emotions, like anger. And that's why I said teaching your child to be stoic, or which is basically kind of what we teach culturally, is helpful. Trying to teach them that the emotions.
No, it's not. Stop lying to me and all the stream. Are you just repeating things and hoping that it becomes true because you've said it 5 times? Stop doing that.
Okay, then.
No. Stop, please. It's not good to raise children that way, because what you're telling them is not to control your emotions, because to control your emotions, you need to feel your emotions. You need to deal with them. You need to understand, what are these emotions trying to tell me about myself? What do I need? That's how you actually deal with your emotions. What you're saying is that you should teach kids that their emotions don't matter, essentially. And then what that leads to is pent up aggression and rage. This is why do you think men act out angrily more often than not? Anger is a secondary emotion.
Most violent people don't have a father figure, and they weren't even taught a lot of these emotional, these ways to control your emotions. If you look at violence, yes, it's basically a lot of people without fathers. That's the truth. So
Okay.
when you're not
has nothing to do with what I'm saying. You have not demonstrated that suppressing emotion in any way, shape, or form is beneficial, when I'm able to give you several pieces of evidence about men that suppress their emotion are at higher risks of all kinds of illness, even cancer.
Like anger? What about suppressing anger? Do you feel like anger should be suppressed?
Anger is a secondary emotion, which means people only feel anger as a result of a primary emotion, which means
crying.
Please let me finish. Anger would be a result of a primary emotion, such as fear or sadness or something like that. So if somebody's angry, it's about understanding, why are you so angry? Probably because you're neglecting what your emotions are telling you. Probably because you need emotional connection. That's literally necessary for an ideal human experience. And you're just cutting that out of your life because you're a man. You're setting yourself up for failure.
Yeah, with that same logic, why don't you apply the same logic to crying? It's like
crying is sadness. That's a primary emotion. Anger would be a result of suppressing that sadness.
You can be sad and not cry.
In anger,
it's secondary as well. You can be sad and not cry. You can be happy and cry. You can be. It's a secondary emotion as well. Crying itself is a secondary emotion. In the same way,
I'm not saying crying.
Anger is a secondary.
Sadness is a primary emotion.
Crying itself is a secondary emotion. It's in response to a primary emotion.
No, crying is a result of the emotion. I'm saying sadness is the emotion that is a primary emotion.
I didn't say sadness was bad, though. I was talking about the crying aspect of it. Everybody feels sad. I feel sad every day.
If you feel sad, your body's natural response to that when you cry is to release chemicals that calm you down and bring you back to baseline. When you reach an extent of constant emotional pressure or something, it's possible or common to sort of shut down and pull back, cry for a minute. It's okay to just cry it out, and you'll be surprised at how quickly you feel better afterwards. And then take a deep breath, go back to what you were doing. I'm not saying you melt down and throw a temper tantrum and act like a baby or something, but I'm saying that if you are dealing with turmoil or tough emotions and you're not letting yourself cry or just feel it, you're not allowing your body to heal. And that is bottling those emotions. It's going to come out as anger.
Yeah, but like I already said, I think it's okay to cry in certain circumstances. For example, my dad, I've seen him cry 2 times in his life. He cried when his sister died and when his father died.
Yeah, I'm not talking about that. I mean that it's okay for people to cry if they're under stress or anything like that.
I do think, my father's always been a role model to me because he's very emotionally strong. And I think that that itself is
Did your
important
dad get
to
angry a
display for
lot?
each other. No,
Your dad
he's
didn't
very
like get
stoic.
mad?
I mean, he's been mad before, but he doesn't get angry very often. He really controls his emotions, and
Okay, but
I think
you're
that
not understanding the difference here with controlling the emotions. So do you want let me walk you through a couple basics. Do you understand that emotions are like important? They're not something to just be ignored.
yes, yeah, I think they're important.
So they are important. So we are in agreement then that emotions are like your body trying to tell you something. To
Yes,
control that, you need to feel it and deal with it and understand where that emotion is coming from. That's what actually handling your emotions looks like. What you are describing right now is suppressing, is feeling a certain way, feeling a certain way, feeling a certain way, and ignoring it because you need to fit some kind of a mold of what it looks like to be a good masculine man. And because suppressing emotion is harmful, since you and I have just agreed that emotions are important, obviously it's harmful for men, it's toxic for men to expect them to just not express emotions, even though they have as many emotions as everyone else.
yeah, I think people are okay. Sorry, people are being told to suppress their emotions uh, in certain circumstances. However, I think that the emotion itself, like feeling emotions, whether it be sadness, I think everybody feels those emotions. However, how you like display it out in the world, I think, is more of the problem. Whether you get over, you overcome by anger, or sadness. I think that itself is the harm, not necessarily the emotions themselves. I'm not saying you should get rid of your emotions and be a freaking robot. I'm saying you should take your emotions, understand those emotions, and react accordingly. When I
Yeah,
feel
but
sad,
sometimes
if I just cry, like
understanding
I said, that does not fix the problem at all. It doesn't fix the problem.
it's not about fixing the problem. It's about bringing yourself back to baseline so that you can fix the problem. I'm not saying crying is going to fix the problem. And I also agree with you, by the way, that yes, there's a time and a place. Obviously, if you're in a big business meeting or something and you get hit with a hard question, breaking down crying, no, that's not really a very good idea. However, if you're having a really long, stressful day where you've been getting a bunch of criticism and whatnot, and then you get home and you're with your partner and you cry because you've had a really stressful day, I don't see a problem with that. That is healthy.
Uh, Now, I wanted to kind of say, like, crying in front of your partner. You can. I don't even know, bro. I'm not gonna lie. I would never cry in those types of circumstances,
You're demonstrating
unless
so
unless I.
many of like you are embodying toxic masculinity. Do you realize that when you refuse to be vulnerable with your partner, you will never progress in that relationship? You'll never have emotional closeness. You won't, because you will never let that person see the side of you that you perceive as weak. Until you can do that, you will never even have a fucking relationship that lasts longer than 3 weeks. So it's not a good idea. I'm reading right here, by the way.
Well, my parents were
How
married for 30 years. How did that? I don't think you need to cry in front of your partner in order for
I
them
don't think
to.
you need to cry in front of your partner, but I think that if you're specifically going to hide your emotions from your partner, that's really unhealthy and it's going to lead to long-term
You can
problems.
you can verbally explain your emotions and how you're feeling and your frustrations. I don't think the crying
Right?
itself
And
is
also, what's wrong
helpful
with
at
crying
all.
sometimes to express that?
Well, crying to express that shows like it's kind of like it shows that you're letting this emotion overcome you so much to the extent where you aren't showing your emotional strength. And I think when it comes to emotions in general, you have to show
You're just
that you
not
can't let the
getting it,
emotions
dude.
control you. You
You
cannot let
think
the
that
emotions control you.
emotional, no, no. You think strength is, again, suppression. Are you aware that back in like ancient times, there was such a thing as masculine weeping? Men would literally weep in public, and that was seen as a masculine thing, a display of your strength because somebody was able to be so vulnerable and open. That's literally how societies used to define crying for men. It's just us. We're silly for some reason, and we've, for some reason, committed to this idea that expressing emotion means you're weak and then you have no control over your emotion. That's not true. You feel your emotions to deal with them. Once you deal with your emotions, you're able to get back to baseline. You're then able to continue acting logically and accordingly. And just letting your partner see you with your guard down, crying or something, that isn't a problem. In fact, Surveys have already shown that the majority of women say they have no problem if their partner were to cry when they're around. In fact, they would actually prefer it because that, again, is emotional intimacy.
Yeah, I think what a lot of people say is, and what a lot of people do is not necessarily the same. You also see people saying it's an ick.
You're
On
just
this app, you
just
see
coping
people say
right
it's
now.
But I have a question. So, what other aspects of masculinity do you think is toxic other than crying?
We're not getting to another part right now because you're not able to move off this one. You've demonstrated toxic masculinity to a T here. You're acknowledging that. First of all, you're acknowledging that emotions are important, but then you're also calling it strength to suppress those emotions, ignore those emotions. Sometimes in
In a
order
given
to
circumstance, yes. In a given
in some
circumstance, yes.
circumstances, yeah, but I'm talking about perpetually and chronically as a man to fit the man mold. That's toxic masculinity. I'm reading right here. I'll close with this. Some ways men hiding their emotions can be harmful include increased stress, anxiety, depression, greater probability of substance use, trouble with communication and forming long-term relationships, overreactions and outbursts to situations, financial social relationship problems, higher heart rate, lowered self-esteem.
So
This is
suppressing,
from a men's recovery program, by the way. I'm not reading this from like feminist.org or something.
yeah, I said so. I think there's a difference between suppressing your emotions and controlling your emotions. I'm not saying you should suppress your emotions. I think that is bad.
Not crying in front of your partner, even if you're overcome with sadness, is suppressing your emotions.
But like we just established earlier, or I said earlier, or you, okay, I mirrored your argument earlier, which is that things like actual like physical anger or uh, crying, I think these are secondary emotions to primary problems and primary emotions. Like feeling sadness or feeling sadness could result in crying, or feeling frustrated could result in crying. I think that combating those emotions directly is the primary thing you should focus on.
What does
In
that mean? What does that mean?
like for example, if you are feeling sad, you can find the root of the sadness, whether it be let's say or frustration. My work is really toxic. My boss, he's being really toxic at work. Well, having a conversation with him or planning to have a conversation with your boss or something is better than crying.
You're
Or
doing it either or thing, though. Why can't you do both? If you get back from a really long day where you've been berated by your boss all day, and you're just like, I just don't know what I'm going to do. Oh my God. And you break down crying. And then afterwards, you're going to come back to baseline and you're like, you know what? This isn't the end of the world. I can have a conversation with my boss tomorrow. That's how logical fucking human beings operate, my dude. You're denying yourself an experience of being human just because you're a man.
well, I just don't think I just said I don't think it's helpful that like I don't
It's
understand.
not
You can't
about
display it's
helping the
helpful.
problem. It's about helping yourself so that you are better equipped to handle the problem.
So how does it make you better equipped to handle a problem when you
Because
cry?
crying is combating the emotion of sadness. If you're overcome with the primary emotion of sadness, crying is a way to get that energy out. And like I already said, your brain releases all kinds of chemicals that bring you down, that help calm you down.
Same
And
with
once you're calmed
meditation.
down, once
Same
those
with meditation. Same with
hold on, wait. Once those emotions are done, like running all through your system in really high intensity, that's then when you're able to think rationally. Then you're able to act accordingly, like you said. I'm not saying you need to throw a tantrum in front of people. I'm saying like if it's a long day, it's okay to let it out.
yeah. Same with meditation can also be a good way to
Yeah.
help control your sadness. You know, there's a lot of different avenues people can go. It doesn't just have to be either this or I'm gonna drink myself to
Yeah, and it
death.
also doesn't have to be either be logical or cry all the time. It's actually both. Logical people acknowledge their emotions, deal with their emotions, and actually handle them so that they then know what those emotions mean so that they're actually in tune with themselves. That's what rational people do. You're describing the opposite of rationale right now. But either way, I appreciate the conversation. Have a good one.